welcome to another edition of Gray Matter. Well, as you know, financial matters have been something of a recurring theme on our podcast. We've had a tax expert, we've had a gold expert, we've had a lady who helps companies restructure, and today we have a man who entitles himself Maximum Freedom for Mankind, but actually Max Freedom. And he is going to educate us and make us familiar, more familiar than hopefully we are right now, with the world of cryptocurrency, which is strange and fantastical to some people, but not to others. I'm excited to learn more about cryptocurrency because I think I'm in the category of most people and that I'm something of a novice to it. And so Max is going to be able to tell us a lot more and some exciting things that he's doing with his company, which is called Epic Cash. Before we get introduced to him formally, as we always do, we're going to go to the quotations board. And these are, of course, in his honor because he's a money man. And the first one is, "Money is a terrible master, but an excellent servant." That's from P.T. Barnum, the famous circus magnate. The next one is, "There's no shortage of money in this world. Start hustling." That's from Grant Cardone, who's a kind of a financial, personal investment and wealth guru. Next one is, "An investment in knowledge pays the best interest." That's Benjamin Franklin, one of the framers of the American Constitution. And finally, from one of my favorite authors in English, Charles Dickens, who once famously wrote, "Money, says the proverb, makes money. When you have got a little, it is often easy to get more." And so hopefully today's guest is going to tell those of us who have a little money how to get more using the magic of cryptocurrency and blockchain and so on. So who's our guest today? Well, as I've said, his name is Max Freedom, and he has involved in a company and founded a company called Epic Cash, Epic Private Investment Cash. And so what Max has been doing is he has launched this company, and it's involved in a number of different things. He's the creator of the Epic Blockchain Protocol and the founder of the Epicenter DAO. He's going to tell us what DAO means. And this is involved in decentralized, privacy-enhanced cryptocurrency developed by a growing volunteer community. Some of the features are Scarcity, a maximum supply of 21 million POW mined coins with an accelerated emission schedule to match BTC's supply by June 2028. Fungible, no tainted coins, featuring protocol level mandatory coin join, which resets the ownership history each time coins are spent. Censorship resistant, that's rather important in Canada these days. No one can interfere with Epic transactions. They cannot be blocked, blacklisted, filtered, or data mined. The network itself is exceptionally resilient with a proven history of resisting significant challenges. And centralization resistant. This is something that I really want to talk to him about because there's a lot of talk about the idea of government-controlled, centralized digital currency. And here it says, "Accessible multi-algorithm mining allows for a variety of equipment types to participate, and not just the latest special purpose ASICs." So, welcome to the show, Max. How are you?
Thank you. Glad to be here. Just want to clear up a couple quick things. So it's
Sure.
Epic Private Internet Cash is the acronym. And we are not a company. So DAO, we pronounce it DAO, means Decentralized Autonomous Organization. So what we've created is free software. We're all volunteers. I'm one of about 200 people in 70 countries that we all have our little oar in the water and we row. Obviously, we have skin in the game. As more people use the network, that increases the value of the existing coins, excuse me, and they get more scarce over time due to the mathematics built into the protocol, where on an ongoing basis, the new supply that comes out of the mining through POW, by the way, is proof of work. That's how the miners on the blockchain get new coins. That's how they are created. And so basically, because the supply of new coins is constantly going down, then that tends to preserve the value, the purchasing power of those that already exist. So we're not a company. Epicenter is a DAO or a meta DAO. It's a DAO of DAOs. There's about 40 of them. Anybody can come and join and participate. That's one of the wonderful things about what we're doing. So great to be here.
That is, first of all, a very, very interesting start, because I feel like I should know, but I did not know what a DAO was, or a DAO was, until now. So I'm grateful for that, first of all. I'd like you to perhaps break this down. I understand from reading a piece about you that was published on a website called Crypto Daily, that you had been working on this project for about 2 years before.
Four.
Okay.
Yeah, mid 2018.
Okay, so it was 2 years before you launched it. Is that right?
We launched in September 2019. We launched the testnet in April 2019. And we really first started sprinting toward the finish line, which is really the start line, in around mid 2018. Okay,
well, let's start at the starting line and tell us, and be gentle. Tell us in as basic terms as possible what blockchain is, because I think that's a kind of important foundation, isn't it?
So I always like to level set by asking this question: do you own any cryptocurrency today?
I do not. But I'm interested. I am very interested in doing so.
The best education, or the best investment anyone can make, is not their money, but their time to educate themselves. Because if you teach someone to fish, they eat forever versus eating for a day if you give them fish. So good on you. So blockchain is a type of database, a very special type of database. If you have a database on your computer or on a server somewhere, then there is a record where the data exists, and software makes updates to the records in that database. Imagine a giant Excel spreadsheet or a series of interlinked spreadsheets is kind of how I think of a database. So the data exists in one place, which is a problem if something happens. Let's say the hard drive crashes, or you lose your data, then it becomes corrupted, and that's bad. And also, if you need to have data mirrored in multiple places, imagine servers in Asia versus servers in Europe, and they're kind of out of kilter. It's hard to keep the data synchronized. And so a blockchain is a type of distributed ledger. You may have heard the phrase DLT, or distributed ledger technology. That is kind of the umbrella term for various types of ledgers, of which a blockchain is one. And so, as the name implies, a blockchain is a chain of blocks. And so what happens is, as the network moves along, in our network, it's every 1 minute. In older networks such as Bitcoin Core, BTC, it's 10 minutes. That's kind of the heartbeat of the network. All of the pending transactions get added to the end of the chain in a block, and it moves along. So our network has done about 1.1 million blocks, and every minute it assembles the pending transactions between users and updates the balances. So I send a coin to you, you send it to Alice, she sends it to Bob, and at the end, it's +1 over here, -1 over there. So the blockchain miners append the pending transactions to the end of the ledger, and then everyone else on the system, known as nodes, they update their balances, and everyone knows how much money everyone has, and nobody can double spend. So that's how a blockchain works.
Wow, that sounds. I'm just sort of piecing that together in my mind, but basically, what it sounds like is, fundamental to all currencies is it's a medium of exchange, right? But here, what's being exchanged is maybe something different than what people are used to. So what's being exchanged in a blockchain environment is what exactly?
That's a great point. So if you think about a blockchain as digital land, is one way to think of it, real estate. Imagine you can only split let's say we have a 12-inch pizza pie and you cut it into 4 slices or 6 or 8 or 21. It doesn't matter how many slices you cut it into, you still have the same 100% total pie. So on our ledger, there can only ever be 21 million. Imagine like little notches on the ruler. Money is a measuring stick for value. At the end of the day, money is just a shared understanding of what constitutes value. And it serves as an intermediate tool to replace barter, because otherwise, due to something known as the double overlapping coincidence of wants, if I have bread and you have horseshoes and neither of us wants what the other has, then it's hard to find a counterparty to the trade. But if I have gold and you have horseshoes and you have bread and somebody else has gold, then we can find a way to link those two ends of the trade together. And so I think about our blockchain as digital real estate. If I own a coin, which is really just a metaphor, what I own is the right to transfer the ownership of that finite digital property to another person. Over the course of the history of humanity, we've used salt, seashells, beads, stones, tally sticks, metals, precious and non-precious, wampum, cattle. In prison they use sardine packets at certain places as money, or cigarettes in Japanese POW camps in World War II. Money can really be anything. And so it's just now there's about 10,000 people is approximately our universe size at this point. Our network is running live in 2,000 cities, 121 countries around the world. That's before spending a single penny on advertising, by the way. So all organic, grassroots type of stuff, like I'm doing here. It spreads word of mouth, person to person, and because it's a really participatory thing, everybody can be a part of it. If you like what you hear and decide, oh, you know what, that doesn't sound quite so crazy, I'm gonna go and get myself 10 epic coins. I'm gonna throw $10 at this crazy pipe dream. Then you're in the boat, and through your advocacy and what you're doing, telling people about it here, maybe those 10 coins, that's a small seed that you put some fertilizer and water around the fertile soil, and then you can grow your relative purchasing power too. So to put it in hard numbers, today there's about 14 million epic coins, and they're around $1 US a piece. 2 years ago, they were under a penny. And so because the scarcity function, no matter how high the price goes, the network can only produce the specified number of coins per day. It tends to be fairly explosive in the price. Epic has the same design as the coin or the asset that most people call Bitcoin, which is really not Bitcoin. It's Bitcoin Core, or BTC, which is kind of a compromised, crippled, watered down bankster version. But our design of 21 million is essentially the same as theirs. It's just that we are 10 years later technology. And so what we've seen in the history of that network is going from essentially 0 to 1 cent to 10 cents to $1 to $10 to $100 to 1,000, 10,000, and then it got 65% of the way through the $100,000 level before experiencing some friction and coming back to earth. So the beauty of our network is that coming 10 years later, we've had the chance to review all of the thousands of cryptocurrency experiments and see what works and what doesn't, and assemble it into one tasty recipe.
Wow, interesting. Well, that answers in part the what. So now let's talk about the why. And here I'm going to turn you to a piece that you wrote back in May of 2020 called Surreptitious Theft and Institutionalized Predations. And the first sentence is, debt-based fiat currencies enslave us all. Can you explain about that? How does debt-based fiat currency enslave us all? Because this, in part, will explain why you're doing what you're doing and why people should be very interested in cryptocurrency, right?
Exactly. So there's a wonderful website called WTFhappenedin1971.com.
Oh, yes.
And okay. And so what happened?
Gold standard?
Well, August 15th, 1971, the world got rug pulled as the United States backed off on its commitment to redeem a Federal Reserve note on demand by foreign central banks only. That was the caveat. If you had a Federal Reserve note, aka the U.S. dollar, not the same thing, but they call we think of them as such. So on August 14th, 1971, you could take your Federal Reserve notes in and get gold at a rate of $35 an ounce. But because we wanted to have guns as well as butter, due to the Vietnam War, we couldn't pay the gold anymore. And so on August 15th, 1971, Nixon said he was going to temporarily close the gold window, and you can't redeem your Federal Reserve notes for gold anymore. Charles de Gaulle actually sent warships, the president of France, to New York Harbor to say, hey, be a good idea if you give us our gold. And he did. But he was the last one to ever get the gold. And so since then, you've just had this uncontrolled explosion of fiat currency. Today, the US M1 money supply is over $21 trillion. Back before the pandemic started 2 years ago, it was $4 trillion. If you go back to the great financial crisis in 2007, it was $1 trillion. And it had taken since 1776 to get that first trillion. So as all hyperinflationary end stage empires tend to do, we're in a very terminal stage of our currency destruction. And so fundamentally, first and foremost, what Epic provides, and why I'm so passionate about this, is the ability for the man on the street to protect himself from the dilution of his purchasing power through inflation. Milton Friedman has a great quote. I liked yours from the beginning of the show. One of my favorites is that inflation is everywhere and always a monetary phenomenon. And so what that means is when they get up on CNBC and say, hey, inflation is going to be really low. It's only 3% this year. By the way, usually those figures are dramatically understated. There's another great website by a guy named John Williams, shadowstats.com, where he calculates the consumer price index if they hadn't messed with the numbers to make them look better, kind of like the Chinese do with their statistics. So let's say it's just 3%. Well, what that is that additional currency units have been created out of thin air that dilute the purchasing power of yours, because just basic supply and demand, there's the same amount of stuff, but now there's $103 in existence rather than 100. So they all buy slightly less. And that leads to all sorts of distortions. And so what we have today with this fiat monetary system is a structural weight or a wealth transfer, because it's not a fair contest, a meritocracy, value delivered for value received. There's a thumb on the scale that directs wealth from the have-nots to the have-yachts. It's an upward wealth concentration effect. And we're seeing the effects of that 50 years on.
Is that the Cantillon effect?
Cantillon effect, yes.
Okay, interesting.
Very good.
And you said it enables, you said in your piece, it enables cronyism, rent-seeking, out-of-control military spending, because the costs are funded in a way that people don't understand. You say in here, you ask the question, did you know that 11% of U.S. taxation revenue goes to pay interest on the money supply? I would expect that number is probably going up as we speak.
Yeah, well, and you're also funding death and destruction on the other side of the world with people that you have no quarrel with. If you remember, Madeleine Albright, after the Iraq War, went on TV and said 500,000 Iraqi children were killed. Was it worth it? And she said, yes. And I said, well, wait a minute. I've been a very productive member of society for decades now and generated a lot of economic activity. And my portion of that 500,000 children is quite substantial. Any blood on my hands is too much. I feel directly culpable for killing those people, and I have no way out of it. So first, how I got to crypto is first learning about precious metals and understanding their historical role in our world, and then discovered fairly late. I didn't get into crypto till late 16, early 17, as a very very simple thesis, just that it's a better gold than gold because of the supply inelasticity property. When there's only 21 million coins, if the price goes up by, let's say the price of gold doubles, and what's going to happen? People are going to go mine for more. They're going to go panning. They're going to melt down, their stuff. The supply of gold is going to increase in response to the market demand signal of higher price, and then the curves intersect. Basic economics 101, and then it finds a balance. But in Epic, because it follows the Bitcoin standard of 21 million design, that can't happen. So no matter how high the price goes, today there is 5,760 coins per day created in the network. Next summer, that goes to 2,880. 2 years later, that goes down to 1,440. And 6 years from now, there will only be 210 coins per day created for however many billions of people on the planet want to own them. And so because of that restriction in flow of new supply, it protects the stock of existing coins in their rarity and scarcity and purchasing power.
So, Max, when we had Bernie Robitaille in the program, he was with Worldwide Precious Metals International. He said something that was new to me. I'd never heard this before. He said that gold is essentially inflation neutral or exempt. I understand. I expect you know what that means. Would that same idea apply to cryptocurrency?
So there's 19,500 cryptocurrencies in existence. That's kind of a misnomer. Let's call them digital assets. Most are not intending to be currencies. There's only really a handful that are trying to do what we are doing. So there's that. So probably remember the .com boom when all the startups came and then most of them died.
I didn't do very well in that.
Yeah, well, hit me up offline. I'll give you some stock trading tips. I did okay. But so my guess is probably 95 to 98% of the assets in existence today will be zero. They simply will not exist in 5 years. It will be that dramatic. So to say that cryptocurrencies writ large as a whole resist inflation, I would say absolutely not. But if you have an asset that has the scarcity built in, now a lot of these have infinite supply, or they have billions and trillions of coins. You may have heard about something called Dogecoin, which is kind of a silly joke that got out of control. That has infinite supply and no utility. So people that are buying Doge, they're just buying into this idea that there's going to be a greater fool later to buy it from you. Another great P.T. Barnum quote, I think, that there's a sucker born every minute or something like that. Yeah. So, when every Uber driver for the past 2 years was giving me tips on Shiba Inu and Dogecoin, I said, okay, the end is nigh, and here we are. So the thing that gives Epic not just inflation parity or neutrality, I think was the term that you used. Over time, gold is inflation neutral. What does that mean? Today, an ounce of gold will buy a fine men's suit. And back in Greek times, it bought a toga. So, the amount of labor from other people that asset commands as a medium of exchange in the course of trade gives you, the same output over the very, very long term. Now, obviously, short term, that doesn't apply. It can go up and down, but over generations, it definitely does. And so, but Epic is a different animal entirely because the supply of gold is constantly growing by about 2% a year. They just found reportedly about 12 trillion worth in Uganda. If they pulled that all out of the ground overnight, which of course they won't, that would be a doubling of gold supply. Imagine what that would do to the markets. But with Epic, there can only be 21 million. And the intrinsic value, as it were, is the ability to frictionlessly communicate with other people in an encrypted way. So it doesn't matter why people value these coins. The fact of the matter is they do, and the number of people that value them is growing. We don't need to take a stance on whether they should value them. Just, beauty is in the eye of the beholder. And there are a lot of reasons that if we had more time, I could get into why they have a value, but basically it comes from the utility of what you can do with them, just like a barrel of oil could be made into fuel. You can make asphalt. You can make petrochemicals. You can make plastics. The same thing here. And so, whereas the best you can hope for with gold is to resist inflation, with Epic, you're really on the right side of inflation, because the more currency they create, the greater purchasing power you get. The greater relative wealth transfer from those who are losing from that process. If you're not on the inside, if you're not on the right side of the Cantillon effect, then you're a loser and you're transferring value to the other poker players at the table. Here, just through the passage of time and that scarcity function built in, you are gaining in purchasing power. So the amount of Epic that it takes to buy a barrel of oil in Honduras, or no, a gallon of gas. I saw this number the other day. There's been an 87% reduction in the price of gas for one of our community members in Honduras, priced in Epic over the past year. I've been tracking for years my cost of living. When I get a receipt from the dinner place and I sign the check, I record how much that is in Epic, and I look back from a year ago, 2 years ago, even 6 months ago, and the dollar price is going through the roof because everybody's costs are inflated. But the number of Epic that it takes to buy that meal keeps going down. So I get richer without doing anything.
Wow. So one thing I want to ask you about in terms of this scarcity, we talk about, to use your analogy with oil. Well, we know that scarcity is manipulated by a number of factors. Apparently, there's some of these guys over in Saudi Arabia having a meeting this week about this with Mr. Biden. But in terms of scarcity of Epic, who or what controls that? Who controls that?
Yeah, that's a great question. So it's an algorithm that is immutable. Once the code was created and the genie got out of the bottle, it's just free software on the internet and nobody can change it. So it's beyond the machinations of man. Oh,
interesting. Well, that was a lot of foresight to put that in there. But we're making you sound like a very unbridled capitalist, which is fine actually in this program, because we're not fans of socialism here. But
guilty as charged.
But it misrepresents you a little bit, because you're more than that based on what I've read here. And this paragraph that you wrote really caught my eye. And you said that Epic was created with the aim of freeing humanity from this system of modern day slavery.
Yes.
Because it is uncensorable and unconfiscatable, it provides a transparent, honest, level playing field for everyone. And so this sounds rather philosophical for somebody who's just hardcore, who's got a picture of Wolf of Wall Street up on his wall.
I'm a volunteer. I'm a volunteer, and I've invested over 10,000 hours on this without any pay at all. I could obviously earn a lot of money doing a trade or business or anything like that. So for me, the mission is worth it to dedicate my time in that way.
So you mentioned Milton Friedman, and I've read a lot of his works as well, and you seem to be someone who subscribes to one of his basic theories, and that is the necessary connection between economic freedom and other types of freedom that people enjoy. In fact, that without economic freedom, the other ones don't exist. Is
Correct.
That fair? Okay. And so that's kind of a core of what you're doing.
I would say what we're doing is inspired by the ideas of, in no particular order, Hayek, so Friedrich Hayek, Murray Rothbard.
Yeah.
What's that?
Yeah. Another friend of the show, he's been quoted on here often.
Yeah.
Yes.
Milton Friedman has some great quotes. Lysander Spooner. I use as my online avatar Andrew Jackson, because he was elected on a single campaign promise, which was to end the parasitic goiter of the time hanging off the neck of the American populace. The Federal Reserve of its era, a lot of people don't know the Federal Reserve is the third private privately owned central bank that's been sucking us dry since 1913. We've actually had four. One was created before the country even started. So in Jackson's era, you had the second bank of the United States, and Andrew Jackson famously gave his den of vipers quote, which I don't remember off heart, but I can pull it up. It's a very interesting one. And then when the country was founded, you had the Bank of United States. And then before the country was created, we had the Bank of North America. So this idea of an unelected cabal of overlords that essentially own everything and rule everything. He who has the gold makes the rules, as it ever has been. We live under that system, and not 1 in 10,000 people know about it because we're not taught, and it's complicated and scary and uninteresting, and so we just go about our lives. But we are really being bled dry, and at this point, there's kind of no more juice to be squeezed out. So we're kind of at a fork in the road. You mentioned CBDC, which we can get to in a moment, but I think that's really really terrifying, and I hope more people take the time to study how important this is.
Yeah, well, I want to talk about that. Before we go there, I want to talk a little bit more about some of the stuff that you've written, because there's some really fascinating stuff here. By the way, on that central bank thing, you're probably familiar with at least one theory of why JFK was killed. He was no fan of the central bank either. Transparent blockchain money enables totalitarian tyranny. This is a piece that you wrote a couple of years ago. And a great sentence here: financial privacy is the bedrock of all of our other freedoms, because without money, life is nigh impossible. That sounds a lot like some of the people that you were mentioning earlier. But then you go on to say here, you ask some questions. Do you want your landlord to know it's time to raise your rent when you get a raise? Do you want your insurance company to jack up your premiums because of your spending patterns? Would you post your every purchase to Twitter or Facebook? And so the concern is here, you say, if you run a business, do you want your staff to know what their colleagues are paid? So this transparent blockchain money, you say, enables totalitarian tyranny. Could you talk about that a little bit, and how you designed Epic to be different than that?
Sure. So Europe and Canada, the trucker protest, they set up a GoFundMe fundraiser to support their efforts, and very quickly $9.3 million came in. And GoFundMe decided, this is the danger with centralized custodial services, by the way, this cannot happen with our system, which is one defense. All payments go directly from one party to another with no central intermediary and no trust involved anywhere in that process. So people gave $9.3 million to GoFundMe on the idea that it would go to the truckers. They did not do that. They said, we're going to keep the money and give it to the cause that we think is worthy. And then there was an outcry, and they gave the money back. Lucky for people that they did get their money back. But then what happened? They started using these transparent blockchains to send funds in. And perhaps it's an apocryphal story, but I heard that there was a woman who donated $50 in Bitcoin Core, BTC, and she found herself on a list of financial terrorists prosecuted under the Emergency Powers Act, and lost her job, her home. These people had their bank accounts frozen. So there are real consequences off-chain to your behavior on-chain. And I don't know about you, but I can't keep track anymore of which side I'm supposed to be on of all these different issues socially. We're tearing down statues, cancel culture. We're all bets are off. And so if you do something today that ex post facto becomes viewed as not just criminal, but even just unsavory. Australia has gone from a first world free nation to North Korean style prison camp over the course of the past 2 years, and Canada is not far behind. So the way we designed Epic to protect against this is that if you and I do a transaction on any of those 19,000 currencies, and a lot of them are tokens. They're not base layer protocols or layer ones, as we call them. Let's just say there's about 100 layers, like pipes that the network, that the transactions can run on, and the rest of those tens of thousands just run on those basic pipes. Epic is one of those base layer protocols like the internet itself. So if I send you a transaction using Ethereum as an example, or Bitcoin Core, or Solana, or Cardano, or Avalanche, or any one of these, then not only can you and I see everything about every other transaction that we've ever done related to our address, but everyone else can see that as well. And so those examples that I gave in that article from so long ago are exactly how it would be. Anything you do online, any payment you make, somebody can see who you sent it to, how much it was for, where you got the money, what the person you sent it to did with it. I mean, we just have no privacy at all, and that can lead to a variety of abuses. So in Epic, if you and I do a transaction, then we alone, me and you, for that one transaction only, can see the details of that transaction, and everyone else can see nothing. They can see a transaction happened, but it's just noise. So on the internet itself, you remember back in the day when it was unsafe to put your credit card numbers online because it had HTTP, and then we had HTTPS, and that was unlocked. That was what was unlocked it's been a long day. What unlocked the potential for e-commerce on the internet to be able to do payments? This is a similar way. If Bitcoin Core is HTTP Bitcoin, we are HTTPS Bitcoin. That same idea of 21 million and peer-to-peer electronic cash and a proof of work blockchain and censorship resistant and decentralized and all that good stuff. So you and I can see the details of that transaction, but no other transactions. So just because I buy a loaf of bread from the baker doesn't mean that he's going to be able to spy on my wallet until the end of time. So that's the first thing. No addresses and no amounts are able to be seen. But crucially, people can verify that the transaction did happen and that there's no funny business going on with the math. Everything is fully open source. That's very important. And so when you have that base layer privacy, it protects the financial details. But there's another piece, which is if you say you're talking about, I don't know, they've all become repressive, but let's just pick some repressive regime somewhere where you, excuse me?
Canada.
Yeah. So let's say you're in Canada and they say, you know what, you can't use this technology anymore. You are the carbon we want to reduce. It's come down to it. We are going to kill you. And you're like, okay, do I buy, some seeds and plant them or die? And you're like, okay, I'm going to go and plant them. Let me buy some seeds using cryptocurrency. Well, if you do that, your IP address is linked to the ISP knows who you are, right? Rogers knows who you are. They can see what's going on. And a man with a weapon shows up to your house. No soup for you. And so with this, it uses encryption to essentially make it impossible to know who sent the transaction from where. Because if you send it from Vancouver, it might pop out on the other side of the world in Vietnam, and it's completely random. So we've taken the appropriate steps to make it so that people don't have to face retaliation based on what they're doing. Now, there's pros and cons to that. Obviously, the form of encryption that we use is not such that Kim Jong-il and people that want to do unsavory things would want to use it, because there's other technologies that if you only care about hiding your tracks from law enforcement or something, you absolutely would not use our tech. So go use some other ones. Zero knowledge proofs, as an example, have up to 1 million what's known as anonymity set, and ours is around 1,000. So it's really a Goldilocks level of privacy that doesn't introduce the possibility of all kinds of abuses and new problems by solving the old problems. We just take care of the challenges that we know we have.
Mm-hmm. Well, I have to say, it's rather impressive and somewhat prescient that you were talking about some things back in the spring of 2020 that are coming to fruition today in modern geopolitical terms. For example, in the piece that I just referred to that you wrote back in May of 2020, you have a paragraph here where you say, we're at a turning point in the history of humanity. If the cashless blockchain future we all know is coming is dominated by centralized, censorable, confiscatable currencies like the foreshadowed digital yuan or dollar, it won't be long before those in power are able to turn off your money at their whim, impose negative interest rates, etc. And then just on July the 29th, 2022, Israel bans cash payments over $4,400 on Monday. Starting next week, which is this week, Israel has prohibited cash transactions above $4,400 and business transactions above $1,760, or transactions involving the equivalent amount in shekels. And the basis for this is safety and security, the old standby. So you saw this coming 2 years ago, didn't you?
Oh, many, many more years ago than that. That's just when I wrote that article.
Right. So how exactly? And so here's something I want to ask you. So, and I think I know what you're going to say. As governments move in to this digital currency market, governments tend to screw up just about everything, especially everything to do with business. Is this going to force the crypto market or people like you out? In other words, is the crypto market sort of bottomed, or are its best days ahead of it, and why?
So it's not the beginning of the end; it's the end of the beginning.
Oh, it's Churchill. Very good.
Yeah. Yeah, one of the most misunderstood psychopath war criminals of all time. Okay. We'll come back and talk about that on another show.
Psychopath. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, exactly. Take what you like and leave the rest. He was a magnificent orator. All right. So the market capitalization of all listed cryptocurrencies went from 0 in 2009 up to 3 trillion on the peak of the last cycle. Now it's down to about 1.1 trillion. So we've had a fierce retrace, but that is pretty par for the course for this space. So the number of crypto owners today is 300 million. And if you overlay the growth curve of cryptocurrency adoption versus the internet itself back in the 90s, you can see that we're actually outpacing the internet itself. So that tells me that within 5 years, maybe 3, we're going to have 1 billion users. And the way the math works on network effects, things known as Metcalfe's law and Reed's law, that determine the value of communications technologies based on the decades that we've had such things, we know that it's going to be, but before we know it, the overall market cap is going to be 10 trillion. So, and that sounds like a lot, but that's only the market capitalization of gold as an example. So the gold market cap is about 10 trillion. Fiat currency as a whole is about 300 trillion. And then you get gross notional derivatives, which is about 4 quadrillion. I mean, nobody even knows, probably much more than that now. So when you look at the market for money and currency, it's based on the functions, which are store of value, medium of exchange, and unit of account. In that Exter's pyramid, as it's known, gold, or in our case, EPIC, would be the store of value. And then you have the US dollar as the medium of exchange. We have something that isn't out yet, a crypto dollar called EUSD that is based on EPIC. We can talk about that if you're interested, but I won't belabor it for now. And then the unit of account function is kind of just like, all right, well, I have this digital credit in the banking system, but this is an offshore dollar. It's a euro dollar. This is a derivative kind of mark to fantasy number that only is really relevant over here. I used to have spendable value in my bank account in Israel, but now I can't use it because of limits. They did this not just in Israel, but in India and UK and Sweden, I believe, or Sweden, I don't think was enforced by law. It was just kind of a cultural thing. So, you know, it wasn't, it sounds prescient and very forward thinking, but it was just having my eyes open about what I saw happening. There's been over 400 fiat currencies that died in the 20th century, as an example. The standard is for fiat currencies to go to zero. They all do. On a long enough, there's a great quote from the website zerohedge.com. On a long enough time scale, the survival rate for everything drops to zero. And so whether it's the British pound or the U.S. dollar or the Spanish piece of 8 or whatever, all monetary commodities have their time in the sun, and then we find better mousetraps and move on.
Mm-hmm. So I saw another story here, and I want to get your take on this, about the UK Financial Regulator plans tighter crypto marketing checks. It says here that the UK's Financial Conduct Authority has introduced new rules on how high-risk investments can be marketed. And though the regulations do not apply to crypto promotions, regulations for crypto advertising are in the pipeline. So is there a risk that that governments are looking at companies like yours, or sorry, not companies, but organizations like yours, currencies like yours, and saying, wow, we really need to, we're missing out on this party, and we're going to take this over? Is there, because I think a lot of people are worried about that, and they're also hearing a lot about the programmable digital currency that already exists in some places, including China, where the government will control how much and how people can spend their currency based on these social credits. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Exactly. Let me take them one by one. So Epic is unique in that we are not a company. If you go to the coinmarketcap.com and look at the top 50 or top 100 or top 20 or whatever, they're almost all companies that basically issued database software, and their tokens could have been their shares, but they chose to do them as tokens, which makes them securities. And so I would say that the companies, absolutely, almost all, if not all of them, are going to be out of business. And it's directly because governments will squeeze them to death. But Epic is free software. I'm a volunteer. Nobody's getting paid. So you can't uninvent elliptic curve cryptography and Mimblewimble and zero knowledge proofs and all this stuff. I mean, you can't put math, you can't put that genie back in the bottle. And so by the enlightened choice of our structure, and of course that made it very, very hard in the early days. I remember there was a similar project using our technology that a few months after launch got up to 300 million in market cap when we were under 50,000. And we kind of felt pretty foolish at that time, but this is a tortoise and hare type of scenario where the first rule of winning long-term is not losing. And in order to not lose, you can't have self-inflicted wounds and unforced errors. And so when everybody else was out there raising money, VCs, venture capitalists raised $30 billion in 2021 for the blockchain sector, which was more than all prior years combined of the industry. And we didn't do that. We chose to go the organic route. And I would say more honest, higher integrity route, because our interests as operators and coin owners and miners are completely aligned with other people that might want to come in later. So I would say, yes, the companies are very vulnerable, but that winnowing force that applies to everything else out there. Imagine a petri dish with bacteria, and somebody goes and sprays some chemicals on there, and all the rest of them get wiped out, and there's this one super bug that can then colonize the whole dish. We're going to be a survivor. Another great quote we like to use is, you don't know who's swimming naked until the tide goes out. There's been a lot of blowups like Terra Luna and Three Arrows Capital, and everybody's a genius in a bull market. But as the cycle continues, a lot of strategies that seem smart short term turn out not to be smart. And so this idea of programmable digital currencies, or so-called CBDC, or central bank digital currencies, are not at all the same as true cryptocurrencies, even if they do use a blockchain, which most of them won't. So I would encourage everyone to look at a speech or there's some excerpts, maybe the video editor can find it, but Agustin Carstens, from the head of the, he was the head of the, or is the head of the Bank for International Settlements, the BIS in Basel, Switzerland. And he was on a live stream with Jerome Powell and some other people, I can't remember, I think there were 4 of them. And he kind of went off the reservation a little bit. He was talking in a very matter-of-fact way about what they will be able to do with these digital credits. And they include such things as, let's say that you are going to the grocery store and you go to check out and you're trying to buy beef. It says, nope, you can't pay for the beef because your carbon footprint is too high. Please replace that with a veggie burger. You cannot pay. Mm-hmm. Or you can only spend within a certain distance of your home. We've all been locked into our homes as prisoners the past couple of years. So now that becomes enforced through your money. We're going to give you this stimulus spending, but it expires in 30 days. So go spend it now. Mm-hmm. Or let's say you're importing products from the US to Canada, and it includes a vendor who is using labor from Mexico. Well, now you have 3 tax authorities that all have a differing view about that very complex transaction. And the default answer is pay me and we'll figure it out later. So now you know how you have all kinds of new problems. The systems are not going to talk to each other. They rely on trust. They have all of the bad parts of the existing systems, plus a bunch of new bad things. I could go on, but I don't want to make everybody cry.
Well, I'm going to trust your opinion on that, because if you look at the mess that governments have made of current currency, it's just it boggles the mind to think the mess that they're going to make of digital currency. I doubt that many of them even understand the technology very well that they're trying to use. I want to get your take on something else that's a little bit related to this idea of digital currency and programmable currency. I caught this article about a guy named Boris Epstein, who's got a new FJB Coin, an FJB app. And it's aimed at conservatives who don't trust liberal-owned and operated cryptocurrency exchanges or are new to crypto investing. And the idea is that this blockchain project would center itself on increasing freedom, jobs, and business for Americans, and has announced the upcoming launch of its own easy-to-use app and platform that aims to be the conservative Coinbase. And the reason why this intrigued me was, I guess it shows the versatility of this technology. But I mean, is this a concern? You know, where people are going to have they're going to use currencies or have their own currencies based upon their political outlook? Is this of concern to you?
I think if conservatives want to use a coin that is better for their needs, then of course they should be free to do that. But if you think about it, nobody wants a money that nobody wants, and everybody wants a money that everybody wants. It's a network effects phenomenon, and it's a winner take most power law returns distribution. So no, I am not concerned at all. There are many legitimate niche use cases for blockchains, and maybe they found one. I'm not familiar with that project, but no, I'm not at all concerned.
So your take is sort of coming from a libertarian point of view and saying, well, you know, why should we restrict this? Why should governments have exclusive control over currency? People should be free to develop their own forms of currency and to determine the modes by which they're going to affect trade and exchanges with each other. Is that essentially where your worldview, where you're coming from?
Exactly. Who are the FJB coin people hurting when they do that?
Right. Exactly. Well, I guess liberals.
well, no, but liberals aren't harmed by them choosing to do things a different way. Not at all.
Well, I suppose on one view of the matter, the idea would be that they would use their own currency and therefore not trade with people who have different political views. But of course, that isn't dependent on currency, is it? Right? You can always decide to take your money where you want to put it. unless we have this, this programmable currency, and we have this, government or elites telling us where we can go and what we can buy and how much and so on. And in that vein, I want to ask you about one other article that I picked up, and this one's a bit old. This is from last December, but it's about the digital loonie in Canada. And apparently this has been in the works for quite a while. The Bank of Canada, horror of horrors, has a plan to issue a digital currency, and it's been conducting a blockchain trial since 2016. Do you know anything about this, if this is coming in Canada or what stage it's at?
I don't.
Have you heard much about it? I'm just curious.
No, I'm not familiar with that.
Okay. Are you familiar with are there plans to do something similar, for example, in the United States, where they would have a programmable digital currency that would, say, take the place of the US dollar?
Yes, it's called Project Hamilton. That one I am familiar with.
Could you tell us about that one?
So first of all, the system is nowhere near ready. As of the latest report, it basically said that the numbers don't add up. 1 + 1 can't be reliably counted on to equal 2. So I believe the phrase they used was important questions regarding auditability have been left to a future phase of the study. So thankfully, I don't know how close Canada is. I would imagine closer because it's a smaller country and more hierarchically driven as far as command and control. So I would imagine Canada is pretty close, but the U.S. is not very close. Also as the world reserve currency and something that's really used as an international tool of trade, more so than the loonie. That's another reason that it would take longer. But essentially, behavioral restrictions, I think we only need to look at China to have an example of what is being, what is in mind, what is in store for us. You can go to the Agenda 2030. You can read Klaus Schwab's books. I mean, they're very open about what they plan to do to us. You may have heard the phrase, "You'll own nothing and be happy." So the "you'll own nothing" part is actively in motion. The "you'll be happy" part, we have to just take their word for it. I have my doubts, but who knows? Maybe insects taste great. So I would say the good news is that we have time to form an alternative and not really be faced with these terrible choices. But essentially, the way it works in China is if you criticize the government, they have this notion of social credit score. So if you use a forbidden word online, or you are seen to be a bad citizen in some way, then your money actually gets turned off. So behavioral control at a very granular level is baked in to the currency itself. So, for example, if you order too many hamburgers at McDonald's, then your health insurance rates go up. If you do some activity that people don't like, or you're in I happen to be a white male, so maybe I should only be allowed to do certain things, or I have to do other things. I mean, just sky's the limit. Whatever can be dreamed of can be implemented directly into the money. And so I would say that history shows us that when power exists, it is used. And it would be ridiculous and foolhardy to imagine that it wouldn't be used. So imagine what could be done in the hands of a psychopath with the ability to control you via your money, and then make it 10 times worse. And that's probably remotely approaching how bad it will be.
One thing I wanted to ask about, you mentioned about this reserve currency. I read a book recently by Ray Dalio called The Changing World Order. And he documents the importance of this reserve currency over time, so I'm curious about, do you think that cryptocurrencies are sort of hastening or driving the end of this era, and also I know that in China and Russia, they teamed up to launch a new reserve fiat currency, and I wonder how that will impact or be impacted by cryptocurrencies. Could you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, it's been a long day. What was the first part again?
The first part was, do you think that over history, let's say over the past...
Oh, reserve currency, right?
Yeah,
right.
This has been very important geopolitically. Do you think that we're coming to the end of that era through the advent and proliferation of cryptocurrencies?
Well, that's a really interesting one. So I'm a plumber. I just hook up the pipes and focus on making sure the ones and zeros add up, and I leave the important social issues to others. So thank you for your service of having this discussion, so that I can focus on the tech. But I would say that historically, they've been really intertwined. I mean, before World War II, the British pound was the world reserve currency, and then as part of that process, the mantle was passed to the United States. It gets really interesting because when we think that governments control currency, that the federal government in the U.S. controls the quote U.S. dollar, but that's actually not the case, because what we're using is the product of a privately owned company, a banking establishment called the Federal Reserve, that is as federal as Federal Express and has no reserves. And so if we were using actual US currency, it would be different, but we're using Federal Reserve notes, which are essentially like car wash tokens or like a video arcade. They're good in their system and nowhere else. So you have the central bank creating currency through open market operations. When the Federal Reserve lends money to the government by buying treasury bonds, they are creating new currency out of nothing. But then you have also the commercial banking system that is able to fractionally reserve deposits and create more currency. There's a great channel on YouTube called Best Evidence by a guy named John Titus. And he talks about this so-called dual channel system. So with the three functions, unit of account, store of value, and medium of exchange, it gets a little messy. All the lines are blurring. I actually don't think that this new reboot of the existing idea, even as strong in Russia and China, will really do anything, because again, money is a network effects phenomenon, and we know that open economies and open systems work better than closed systems. The United States outcompeted the Soviet Union, as an example. It took many decades to have that happen. So it could take quite a while, but eventually people that want to trade with Russia and China, do you want to use the currency that's only used there, or do you want to use the currency that's used everywhere in the world? So just to speak about our plans for the other two sides of the coin, Epic is a great store of value and a great medium of exchange. Store of value is underpinned by 21 million scarcity, and medium of exchange is underpinned by the fluidity and frictionlessness of being able to make a lot of payments. You can send Epic payments for 1,000th of a penny, and they will go through. We can do 1.4 million transactions a day today, and in 5 years, that'll be over 1 billion. So we've got capacity for days. So it's cheaper, faster, and better than other forms of money and currency. But if you think about it, it's kind of a poor unit of account, because we live in a fiat world. And today the value of Epic is $1. Maybe all your listeners hear this and they go out and buy some, and now we're $2, and or they say this sucks, and everybody that's listening sells, and we go down to 50 cents. Well, if we had a contract for wages or rent, or even a dinner check, I order, and then by the time the bill comes, somebody's winning or losing 10, 20%. That's not going to work. So what we created is a crypto dollar, an inverse mirror image doppelganger, a yin and yang kind of a concept, where we've got two assets that coexist on one ledger. One side of the coin is Epic, and the other side of the coin is EUSD. EUSD is a crypto dollar that doesn't exist yet, but we're building it. This has actually been in development since before Epic launched. We created Epic because we realized in the creation of EUSD that we needed something like this to exist in the world, and it didn't. So we had to build it and get it out there. Once we have EUSD, what you'll be able to do is create the Bank of Gray, and take your Epic holdings and issue yourself an equity line of credit against the value of those holdings to access your spending power without having to sell the coins. So if you want to go buy something for $1,000, let's say, you would have to put up initially, it's going to be 2 to 1, $2,000 of Epic collateral to issue yourself a loan for 1,000 EUSD, and then that stays as collateral in the Every Citizen's Reserve algorithmic central bank, operated by us, the community of token holders of Epicenter DAO through the ECR token, and so through that algorithmic central bank, the EUSD is always redeemable for $1 worth of Epic, no matter what the price is. So if the price doubles, then it's half as many Epic. If it goes down by half, you get twice as many. And so we've taken out the exchange rate risk and the volatility by enabling people to transact in essentially a derivative off of that same finite scarcity of Epic. So we've recreated the extras pyramid, but on a decentralized basis.
So that explanation hits a few other of your pillars. You've talked a lot about scarcity and why that exists, but also you just explained why it's fungible and censorship resistant and centralization resistant, right?
Right. So centralization resistance is actually a very interesting one. If you look at Ethereum as an example, 70% of the Ether was created out of thin air when the network launched, and many people earned billions of dollars from the value of those coins going from nothing to something. And that's created a cartel, a cliquish cartel oligopoly of powerful whales' vested interests that drive the development direction and evolution of the system in a way that's best for that small subset of early first movers rather than people who came later. Bitcoin Core is also highly centralized. 64 people mined about 80% of the coins that came out in the first few years when nobody knew about it. And so we've really made forward-thinking, enlightened choices about our emission curve and about when things come out, and really tried to spread the wealth around. So by not having a company, we're all volunteers. It's free software. There's no office. There's no board of directors. There's really no anything. I mean, the Epic project is hundreds of social media communities around every platform you can think of, from Telegram to Facebook to Instagram to WhatsApp to Line to Kakao Talk. I mean, wherever people are talking, they're talking about Epic, and they're doing grassroots guerrilla marketing stuff. I was picking up trash on the streets of Miami with a bunch of people wearing our Epic shirts. And we got not only did something good for our neighborhood, but got a great photo op out of it, and showed the use case of Epic as something more than money. So we resist centralization in everything we do, because people are really are fallible. I mean, we're all human, and there's a tendency for people to become corrupt over time. So we've tried to design against that from the get-go.
Brilliant. So people listen to this, they want to get involved. They listen to you, they think, wow, this Epic Cash thing sounds great. Love Max. Where do they find you? How do they get involved? How do they invest in this product or in this currency?
So our website is epic.tech, TECH. We're on Telegram, Twitter, Facebook, you name it. Just search for Epic Cash anywhere, and you'll find it. There's about 1,000 hours of YouTube videos online. There's a website called epicentral.io that has content in 55 languages. Our white paper is in 55 languages, as an example. There's hundreds of high quality PDFs in many languages there. So those are good. But I would say the best place is on Telegram. That's kind of where most of the action is happening. That's our biggest social community. It's t.me/Epic Cash. and there's about 2,000 people in there, usually about 200-300 of us at any given time. We've got Freeman University. We've got a help desk if you want to get set up with mining. That's the other thing is I would encourage people to download the miner and just let their computer produce passive income. Particularly if you have a gaming computer with a graphics card, a GPU, you can earn some serious money. I mean, one high-end gaming rig can produce hundreds of dollars a month at today's value in coins. We use a multi-algorithm system where you can mine it on an ordinary laptop or a MacBook or anything like that. Later this year, you'll actually be able to mine Epic on a cell phone. So that'll be pretty cool.
So they would be able to find that app on the epic.tech website?
Correct.
Okay,
epic.tech/downloads.
Fantastic. Well, this is the part of the podcast that we call the reading list. From listening to you, you're obviously very well read. I think we can already recommend that to them. Friedman, that's going to be interesting. I'm sure that's just a wealth of information there. I've got a couple of books that I'm going to recommend. One of them I actually found from researching you on the internet. It's called Letters of Mark. Are you familiar with this one?
No.
Oh, anyway, this is
sounds like it's about piracy.
Yes, that's it. Yeah, and so this one it goes into some detail about some of the things we've been talking about, and that is how governments and certain people regard what you are doing and what cryptocurrency people are doing as piracy. And I guess you would say the same thing about fiat currency. But this looks like an interesting piece written from a certain perspective. But this book was actually on a website where some of your articles were posted. So I thought that would be one that would be interesting for people to check out. And another one I found is a book by a man named Gavin Finney called Cryptocurrency: Beginner's Simplified Guide to Make Money with Cryptocurrency. Are you familiar with this book?
I am not.
Yeah. Anyway, it has frequently asked questions about what cryptocurrency is, why it can be a good investment, how it works, what blockchain technology is, how to choose the right cryptocurrencies, and things of that nature that you've been talking about today. So I mentioned that one as perhaps one where people who are new to this technology can sort of dip their toe in the pool and learn more. But it sounds like they can do a lot of that just by going and accessing your website. So do you have any resources that you'd recommend, Max?
Yeah, so that reminds me, I was just taking a note as you were talking. I've got 6 of them here, but I'll pull together a list and update my website. But in no particular order, books that have really contributed to my edumacation are Behind the Curtain by John Hamer, End of Freedom by John Sneisen, Economics in One Lesson by Henry Hazlitt, Ascent of Money by Neil Ferguson, Why Nations Fail by Darren Acemoglu, and Confessions of an Economic Hitman by John Perkins.
Oh, I love that last title.
Have you ever read that? There's 3 of them. Oh, no. Yeah, it's great. Oh my God, you're missing out. Hit me up after the show and I'll send it to you. But there's a whole bunch of them. He's done, I think, 2 or 3. He basically was a jackal. Have you ever heard the expression from the Colombian drug lords, plata o plomo?
Yes.
You know, you can take the bribe or you get a bullet. Mm-hmm. So he would go. He worked for a 3-letter agency linked. Or multiple 3-letter agencies linked management consultancy known as Chas T. Main that doesn't exist anymore. One of those white shoe elite like mover and shaker type of crony, patronage networks. And so what he would do is go into, say, Ecuador and be like, hey, you're going to put a hydroelectric dam here. And they said, we don't want a hydroelectric dam. And he said, but we're going to loan you the money. We're going to loan the country $1 billion. And by the way, if you don't, plata o plomo, remember, if you don't, then somebody will depose you and take your place. So be smart here, buddy. So you're going to take this hydroelectric dam that nobody needs, a bridge to nowhere or whatever, and have the World Bank give them loans to the country. And of course, a certain percentage gets skimmed off the top to ruling elites. The son of the president of Equatorial Guinea, as an example, is an impoverished Western African oil-producing nation. And the son, Teodoro Obiang, I think is his name, has, I think, like 16 luxury cars and 3 Malibu mansions, something like that. I mean, just the scale of corruption is enormous. So they're skimming off the top, and then they have this worthless piece of infrastructure that nobody needs, that the country has to pay debt service on until the end of time. And then eventually they come to a point where they have the currency crisis and they can't pay the dollar denominated debt. And what do? The IMF says, well, you need to have austerity. You got to cut funding for all this and that to preserve your credit rating. You can't go back on your deal, blah, blah, blah. And then eventually the country goes bankrupt and the banksters come in and take title to the physical asset that was created. And so this guy worked as an agent of evil for long enough to where he finally got sick of it and said, okay, I'm going to write a tell-all expose and warn people about that this is happening. So that's called Confessions of an Economic Hitman.
Wow, how did he avoid the hitmen who are intended for him?
Yeah, right.
That's another book.
Yeah,
that's a movie starring Matt Damon, I think.
Yeah, exactly. So dangerous times, dangerous work, and all that. But all it takes for evil to prevail is for good men to stand by and do nothing. So people are getting hurt. This is immoral, and the technology exists to put a sword and a shield in every person's hands to resist if they want to. So if you want to submit and be a slave, good on you. Have a nice life. But if you want to protect what's yours, then now you have the way.
Brilliant. This one of the best things about doing this podcast, Max, is I get to meet people like you and talk to you, and because you're experts in things that I don't know anything about, and I don't know everything. I don't pretend to know everything, but I'm eminently curious, and I'm very, very grateful to you for being with us today and for sharing your time and your knowledge. It's obvious that you're very, very passionate about what you do. That's palpable. It comes across. And what I like about what you're doing, my sense of it is, yes, it's about making money, it's about building wealth, but fundamentally, it's a means to an end. It's a means to freedom, and that what you're really interested in is not cash, but freedom. So it's been just an absolute pleasure meeting you today and learning more about what you're doing. And I wish you much continued success. Thank you so much for being with us here on Gray Matter.
Well, I appreciate having me on. Thanks so much.